Benjamin Kallenberg from consciousazine.com, and today I thought we would watch some new videos from Riser 5 and the Gold Ring Game of Enlightenment and Abundance, something I've noticed online since 2009, and Riser speaks from a very high level, I've noticed. So, you know, he is talking about awakening soul, so I wanted to make another video on organic portals here, but with his words from very high perspectives, and he talks about current times, so what's happening with the starlight, the evoluting starlight, which changes your DNA, yeah? You know, he's an astrology master, so he knows what light's going on, and apparently it's the Arcturian alignment now, and Andromedan enlightenment, you know, at the end of history here. And so he's very onto it, so I just wanted to listen to his overview, and I think you might like the way he says stuff from a very high level on the soul and spirited nature.
As the third-dimensional society reaches critical mass in evolutionary development, the outer edges of its empirical reality are faced with irreconcilable difficulties. The worldview within the third dimension is based upon limitation and management of resources to gain power over the environment and protect against interference. The result is the creation of fear, which manifests as a protective shell around the emotional body and collectively around the nations, cultures, and races. Once fear becomes hardened as a protective sheath to seal the individual spirit within the temporal physical framework, the polarized energies become resistance to the other layers, and causation reverses like a pendulum to reduce the structure back into nothingness. The world of polarity and causation is the world of karma. It is an ever-shifting realm of kinetic physical quantum energies forming and separating constantly in complexity. From the outside observer's point of view, there is a continuous pattern of growth that has its own ecology. From within the system, it appears to be a constant struggle to maintain existence against innumerable odds and an unrelenting force of destruction. All in all, it is part of the playing out of the larger reality of life. Third-dimensional reality should not be considered more or less important than any of the other dimensions, although it gains a great deal of attention as it focuses the content of the others in particularized forms. The physical forms are based in material and energetic existence in a playing field of polarized magnetic forces. These forces allow for the creation and destruction of everything that manifests along timelines that correspond to spatial points. In conjunction with this dimension, as a layer or integral link, mental emotional constructions of the higher intelligent creators. We come to you now to let you know that your house of light will be held strong in the coming storms. As you hold the covenant of peace and prosper with your neighbors, your home will be safe and protected from all pain, disturbance, and attacks. The winds and rains come in this hour, and your home is strong and safe. Hold this feeling and know you are within a protected space of love and light. In the coming months, there will be changes as you wish for them. The changes will be appropriate, and in your life, you have always been cared for. This time is no different. You are cared for, and you are to align with the energies of the sun. From the view of higher intelligence, the pieces of light ask you to become clear about your life and see past the physical efforts of the world to keep you in shackles of confusion. Your home is a house of light and strong beyond compare, abundant, free, and with a loving family that protects all of its children. As you venture into the night, know that your home is safe and be guided to your destination where you are cared for inside the larger family. The coming forth of the message of abundance and prosperity for all arrives within your heart and within the heart of each of your neighbors as they see that they are born of spirit and connected to soul. It is time to give your feelings forth and select the thoughts that feed them with love, goodness, prosperity, and wisdom. Thoughts are generated by the group mind, and they are frequencies of infinite diversity with endless variety and supreme contrast. Your individual mind receives these thoughts in the manner of a radio receiver tuned to channels of vibrations. Each individual mental body can receive millions upon millions of individual thoughts a day, but there is not one thought that can be created new. You are a receiver of thoughts, but transmitters of feelings. Through your emotional body and heart, you feel and combine thoughts and forms, which become manifested if enough energy of feeling is concentrated and focused upon the thoughts you select. Let it be said that the importance of the thought is lesser than the feeling, for the feeling empowers thoughts to become forms of manifestation within your fields of experience. It is here then that the combination of the mental thought with the emotional form becomes manifest. The individual mind chooses their thoughts in order to move forward on your life plan of manifestation, and it is your free will that selects the channel based upon your emotional guidance system. When you are in a state of grace, bliss and love of life, then you find it easy to select thoughts that support your self-confidence, prosperity, and altruistic humanitarian impulses. Under an emotional cloud of despair, because you have selected ideas and images of things that contain painful, depressive, and hopelessness, the feelings you create naturally vibrate with that level and create thought forms to manifestations that follow a negative spiral of confusion, anger, and apathy. Once you begin to realize that only the feeling is your responsibility, and the higher the vibration of feeling you have, the more likely you will choose thoughts that support enjoyment and happiness, and share this with others who are part of your greater family. In the house of light, you are protected away from pain, problems, disturbances, and defeat.
Well, I always notice that OPs choose a lot of negative thoughts as well. And it's like a spiral into atrophy, and it's said that the dark side, so to speak, or the Black Alliance, or the family of dark in the universe collectively, holds or knows all the thoughts that exist away from the stream. And that goes with the word atrophy. When you look up the meaning of the word atrophy, you can sort of imagine it as a sucking into nothingness. And I notice OPs do a lot of that sort of thinking.
The world of your experience is all illusion, a dream, a fantasy of ideas, thoughts and images that have no content other than the intention.
Now it also makes sense dimensionally, because I think, as in the previous video, Riza was saying, there's, always seemingly a force of destruction that's relentless. Things decay. You can see it in rust, you can see bodies dying, things decay, and in that decay, I think that is like into the first dimension of matter dying to be used again, in the full circle back to the 10th or 12th or whatever dimension there. And so basically, the second dimension, flatland, what I'm always saying, the organic portals are their body and they are flatland, like Dr. Quantum on What the Bleep Do We Know, Down the Rabbit Hole science documentary that came out in 2006. That very famous Dr. Quantum with his, double slit experiment in the cartoon version, and he wakes up the little circle in flatland. Well, that's what I'm always saying that the OPs are like. They're like flatlanders. They're like that circle in the maze. And, you know, from within the second dimension, looking at physical stuff, no wonder science can't really work out the, you know, the true nature of reality and stuff, because, you know, the upper dimensions and intangibility, because all it focuses on is tangibility and what's made and tangible. And there's a lot of inferral to do how that physical particularization got there from the upper dimensional correlations and mechanics, you know, the sound, the length of the particle, and so on. That's like seventh dimensional. That's already kind of immaterial, intangible sound, yeah, across the threshold already. So the point is that they are not cross-threshold beings, and they don't have their own sound, and they don't pick up the sound of creation. The sound of creation does not awake OPs or organic portals. And in the sounds of creation there are spirits and spiritedness. And for instance, when you take psychedelics, the core plant, fungi, organic hallucinogens from nature, no synthetics I'm talking about, you get the full gamut of what the universe has embedded into the planet, and the planet into the psychedelic. And, you know, food is one of the main mechanisms now for evolution, and, you know, not only is it a food with crazy chemicals and evolutionary properties, but in my opinion, it's a beingness that is aware of star energies as well, the entheogens. You know, these plant spirits that are very obvious to us. Well, I think, you know, parsley has its spirit. I think kale has a spirit. And that is part of how body occurs, how spirit is expressed, creates, you know, through geometry and stuff, shining through geometry creates form. You know, it's like schematics creates form. So what's interesting is it's like the OPs are missing the inner songs of their own, missing the universal sounds, and not picking up on universal sounds in the same way. Like if you have a calcified pineal, for instance, you know, you're obviously not going to be able to be sensitive to some sort of vibrations, because the crystals in there spin and all this business. And if you are positively charged and full of static, your septum pellucidum, the membrane sort of surrounding your limbic brain, where the pineal projects onto the images, needs to be clear. And if you have static resonance and you are not in certain resonances and a souled being, it's hard for you to be cohered. You know, negative charge is coherence, and positive charge static is like decoherence and atrophy and static and confusion, right? So your septum pellucidum will actually be vibrating already if it's not clear and negatively charged. And in that vibration, that's a distortion on the images. That's even if you have an active pineal. Anyway, so there's all these things to consider, and really, when you're not acting out your own feelings and emotions, and you're from the inside out, then you're doing the opposite. You'll be accepting from the outside in how to act and be, and this is you being controlled. That's not you having your own thoughts. And that's how OPs are, you know, the absolute bitches to the Matrix, they're stooges of the Matrix, and the control struct. And the control struct is ultimately just a big piece of code, a struct. Like in programming I do, I can make a struct, I can make, it's a structure. I can make arrays, I can make structs, I can make, you know, just normal functions, variables, all this stuff. So, you know, to discover your feelings and emotions and be them, is to be your spirits. And what I say is that people have watered down their spirits to cheap wine. That's something that came to me a while ago, anyway. Let's continue with the video. So the OPs, the idea of them being second-dimensionally flatland or inanimate matter, not animate. If I create an Adobe Flash game, and code that, and I create a little game with a little man running on the screen, collecting food, let's say, working a job, whatever. First, I draw him on the screen, and he's inanimate, and he's just second-dimensionally flat. Then I code it, and the code is like the conscious light that codes us. Okay? The still single light is the light of God, and that filters through the dimensional metrics and systematics and mechanics to create form in the end, in the second and third dimension. But the second dimension itself is not living. The second dimension is completely inanimate. When we get to the third dimension, that is where the seed point of sovereignty or consciousness may occur, when they have a true self-ego beginning. And ego is the seed point of sovereignty. Sovereignty, yeah, the ego is all like, I'm separate, I'm sovereign. Yeah, that's the ego. What did the, Buddha say? He said, remove the I am. Yeah, so there's this whole I am movement in the New Age movement. Oh, I am. Well, that's still speaking egoically. Yeah, we know that you are, that you exist, obviously. But then there's simulation theory, and throw that at them. Anyway, let's get back to these videos.
You decide to put forth. When you apply your emotion to them, you activate them into your reality. In the realm of this illusion, you have power.
So we can activate the organic portals to become more souled. So there is ability to awaken third dimensional, or OPs, the ones that have just got a little bit of dim light in them and realize like their sovereignty, yeah? Some OPs are at this level. The hive mind is second dimensional, and the organic portals who are second dimensionally, totally second dimensional, and they haven't yet transgressed to become third dimensional beings, they're the completely unconscious ones that there is no way to awake, and nature has to awaken them first with the seed point of sovereignty. Then they become third dimensionally realizing or conscious, yeah? The second dimensional veil is then dropped or filtered, and they become realizing that they are sovereign somehow. Then their journey begins to discover their fourth dimensional feelings and emotions. And this is infinite. So at some point in the fourth dimensional turmoil of your feelings, and this usually happens to people in their teenage years a lot, it seems to culminate then, you know, when you start feeling with your emotions and stuff, this is when you start realizing, well, there has to be something more than this, because there's a lot of pain in there, and duality, and it's, oh, I'm happy, or I'm this, or I'm sad, or I'm happy, and it's back and forth, and polarity, up and down, duality, and then you realize that there's something at the center, and that's the fifth dimensional point, or field. And the fifth dimensional dimensionality is non-duality, and you start to awaken out of the ego completely. That's when the ego starts to rapidly decline, and you realize, you know, the larger oneness of everything, basically, and you start saying Namaste and In Lakesh. That's that area of awakening, the fifth dimension. You know, the seventh dimensional rays are like, not emotions, but higher moods that can be expressed through you. And, alright, let's continue.
Power to instantly change your channel and receive higher thoughts.
So what we can do is help them awaken once they're third-dimensional beings. There's a little bit of, like, people rate OPs in 10% consciousness, 20% and stuff. Well, that's when they're, you know, at those low percentages, but there's some dim light there. They're not very bright, but it's dim, but there's a little bit of consciousness there sneaking in. They're the OPs we actually can help along. You can't really awaken them to the 5th dimension, because they've only just awakened to the 3rd. Okay? The point is to awaken them to their own emotions and feelings, so they transgress instantly into the 4th, or very quickly, and realization of the 3rd dimensional veil that, you know, because the 3rd dimensional veil goes with the 2nd dimensional control of lust of things in this world, and body and matter over spirit and stuff. Once you transgress to 4th dimensional realization, the being really sort of realizes the material world as the material and starts to realize there is immaterial existence and more than they can sense and see out there. That happens on the 4th dimensional feeling body installation, because you start feeling things you can't see. Yeah, and then you start having, you know, experiences of, let's call them paranormal and stuff. And then you transgress really to the 5th dimension after that, and this is more of the real awakening that people talk about, and waking up. So if you're an OP listening and you're wondering what everyone's talking about when they say waking up, that is not really the awakening to the 3rd dimensionality, seed point, and ego sovereignty of yourself, but it's a high realization that you're part of larger ongoings. The 5th dimension contains all the knowledge of the universe, and there is the acacia, which you'll discover past lives. You become more whole. I don't want to talk about it too much more right now.
Which harmonize with higher emotional states, which in turn produce manifestations in accord with the thoughts and emotions produced. It is simply a matter of vibration, empowerment, and focus.
And at that point, once the 3rd, 4th, and 5th dimensionalities are connected through the opacity veil drop, and lucidity is increased so much that you realize that you are like creating stuff for yourself, seemingly, or kind of directing the flow of consciousness of the universe and the light of the universe.
This level of reality, the 3rd dimension, things appear when they are focused on by consciousness and placed into consensual awareness. For ideas to come into creative stream, they must be implied by a personal emotion. Without emotion, ideas float in an ocean of potential where nothing comes again.
And I've always said that the OPs, organic portals, are entropy and atrophy. And when you awaken sort of 5th dimensionally, that's when you get your Christ body, your light body, yeah. The light body is 5th dimensional, it's quite complex. But that's an informational 5th dimensional light body, which is akin to the Christ body of yourself, and that's what you should be following, not Jesus. Anyway, because your light body directly follows God, the light body, yeah? That's the point. That's why Jesus said all that weird shit he said about the only way to God is through me. What he was doing was talking from his id, from his 5th dimensional light body when he said that stuff. Okay, anyway. Besides the obvious, what were we saying here? What was he up to? Hold on.
Without emotion, ideas float in an ocean of potential.
Oh yeah, so they're like entropy, you know, and when you wake up, you are like entropy. Still, you know, when you have that 3rd dimensional seed point of sovereignty sort of awakening, and you begin to 4th dimensionally feel, you know, you have this realization that you've got all possibility in front of you, or entropy. You see entropy, and you can go any way, infinite ways, and you you start to realize vectorization and great work then.
Where nothing becomes a thing. When a manifest being receives an idea and begins to empower it with emotion, then the idea grows in strength for that individual, and as it becomes more and more focused with intensity, it starts to draw to itself a corresponding manifestation. This is simply the law of attraction following the principle of achievement. In each reality is given special templates which hold a society to a format that includes the plan for development. This plan is designated by the collective will or emotion of the group of family. From the group mind, the family, nation, or planet seeks ideas that correspond to the manifestation that is desired by the collective will. The collective will is shown to some, that you know avatars, sages, philosophers, humanitarians, and other world leaders. Through the process of selection, there is a continuous choosing of ideas that support the shared feelings of humanity. The consensual reality is thus chosen for the manifestation through the inner sense of collective understanding. Concepts of history are collective memories that fade from consciousness, not unlike the remembrance of adult childhood. It is a vague speculation of dream images, and only the deeper feelings of acceptance and rejection are recoverable. There are strong emotional feelings that are left deep within the psyche that hold whatever reality encoded with the passion, pleasure, pain, and bliss of the unalterable, blurred moments of personal history. It is within the past that there are habits of emotional selection which are to be forgiven. In the ever-present now, the opportunities for the selection of ideas are most abundant and give you the ability to choose direction and achieve higher levels of awakening. Your body is a house of light, and your emotions are a home of love. It is the way of the world to acknowledge the highest form of being throughout creation. In this manner, you are given the components of that which will result in the creative manifestation. You are the creator and live within the house of light. It is your being that is known to own a home created by love. Discover your feelings and let them guide you to the house of light and to the home of love. It is for you to return and be welcomed in the abode of spirit and soul. Within your mind, seek the vibrations of thoughts that bring forth the feelings of joy and bliss. Let each day pass with the guidance of happiness as you wake shortly into the future. It is for you to learn how to travel with your mind using the body and emotions, which are the measure of your being through which you know the currents of the flow. In peace and gratitude, you are given additional knowledge that will guide your way in the days ahead. The teachers of light know the end of your journey with bliss and ecstasy, as you are given the fruits of divine joy by the desire of your spirit for the eternal soul. It is complete as you connect and flow with the stream that empowers your emotions to select from the infinite mind the dreams that enlighten your way.